social dynamics or tribal dynamics or consensus consciousness dynamics, however we would phrase them. Unconscious group dynamics are, generally speaking, they're not wrong, they're not bad, and they have the dynamics that they have. They have the seeming positives and the seeming negative dynamics that they do. And we would suggest that dynamics of definitions of power, as power has been ascribed or interpreted or applied or experienced in prior generations, has the potential to be completely rewritten in this generation if we choose to rewrite it individually and collectively. And of course, there's a lot of resistance to that rewriting process. There's an inertia to the past. There is a tendency to reflect upon prior pain, prior dynamics, prior traumas, that and to associate those dynamics of pain or suffering with power, or being dominated, with associating that with somehow that being an expression of power, and thus not to see what might be termed more real, true expressions of power. Unconditional love is incredibly powerful. Some would say infinitely or limitlessly powerful. Alignment with spirit is infinitely powerful. Forgiveness is incredibly powerful. Empathy and compassion are incredibly powerful. And they might not be seen to be so if we have been conditioned to look upon prior dynamics, tribal dynamics or relational dynamics or ego-identified dynamics or unilateral decision-making or authoritarian dynamics. If we've seen those as power, then we might assume that if we want to be powerful, we're required to operate in those ways, rather than just operating from love, kindness, care, service, intention, alignment with spirit, surrender to spirit, compassion and empathy. And so this is a list of various kinds of what might be termed non-optimal power or non-unconscious power. So, of course, violence, threats, destruction, or the insinuated potential for either verbal, mental, emotional, energetic, or physical violence, or even spiritual violence that can be imagined to be possible and can be affected in just not in alignment with spirit. Meaning some of our spiritual dimensions that are not fully soul aligned can operate destructively. We don't advocate it. We just did want to be thorough in our description. Threats of destruction, either in the current moment or some supposed future possible potential moment, are kind of acts of violence and or dynamics of negative application of power. Unilateral decision-making in and of itself is a supposed expression of power. It's not really power, and it might appear to be power. And even if it is imagined by the unilateral decision maker to be power, it doesn't mean that other people see it that way. Or if it's not seen as power by the unilateral decision maker, it doesn't mean that other people seeing or experiencing the effects of the decision won't see it as authoritative, overbearing, domineering, or disrespectful. Of course, forced compliance in any area of life is often interpreted as a dynamic of power, whether it's legal or military or just being required to have a driver's license or in the way that we're allowed to vote or not to vote. If someone insinuates or threatens abandonment or diminishment of us, either personally or socially or relationally or in terms of our gender or our self-image or our social image, that can be a seeming expression of power. And so we tend to fear these different dynamics of application of ego power or negative power, unconscious power or violent power. And our fear can turn into either compliance or accommodation or submission or not affecting our personal power and our free will in any given moment. And then life feels like it's less. We feel like we're less happy, less creative, less capable, less fulfilled, judging, blaming, or shaming self or other can be seen as being wrong or bad or not good enough or too much. Can all be seen as application of relational or social power. And even lastly here, keeping the fear-based status quo life process in place can appear to be a kind of power, a kind of dragging the feet of the tribe or the consensus consciousness or the individual egoically dragging their feet and keeping dysfunctional dynamics of all kinds in place, whether it's relational dynamics or whether it's climate change dynamics or whether it's not taking action in constructive ways in any area of life. That can be seen as an application of power. And it is an application of free will. And free will is incredibly powerful. And we wouldn't get any of these in this list. We wouldn't suggest mixing any of them up with the power of conscious free will, which is generally offered with discernment and care and love and compassion. So we are hoping to ask you folks for any reflections in regard to these dynamics of supposed power and how we can go about redefining power in a way that is relational, in a way that is loving, in a way that is serving of all of humanity and everyone that we care about in our lives, and in a way that is serving of the natural world. How many people would say, well, if somebody can strike someone or hurt them or kill them, that they're supposedly powerful? And then if you said it to the same person, it is the person who operates from love, kindness, care, and consciousness and surrender to spirit, are they equally powerful? They might have a difficult time answering you. So there's a calculus of power that we hope to discuss, if you folks are open to it today. This process of power assessment, power evaluation, power determination, power assignment, meaning or projection, meaning that we can assume and project onto others that they either have a lot of power, they don't have any power, or that they don't have as much power as we do, or that they have more power than we do. And that's just an evaluation. It's just an interpretation. So we're hoping to ask you folks for what's your calculus of evaluating or determining how much power you have in any given moment, how much power you have in any relationship, how much power you have socially or interpersonally, or how that calculus, that evaluation of your power shifts, changes, or morphs from moment to moment, day to day, relationship to relationship, and conversation to conversation. Now, this is a more nuanced question. Let's say that you were in a facilitation role and as a healer, in air quotes, or as a facilitator, a counselor, you recognized that the person that you were wanting to help and facilitate had felt emotionally wounded by one parent or the other that they had, and you wanted to help them. So you said, well, I've noticed that there seems to be a good bit of unresolved pain in your system related to this parent or that parent. Now, if they weren't ready to answer that question or ready to to work with that pain, might they feel quite triggered and say, no, I don't feel that way at all. I've got the best parents in the world. And I think you're a mean person for insinuating that. And I'm leaving. Now, the next question, if a child falls down and skins their knee and it hurts really bad, do they want anybody messing with it, even if they were going to put Bactine and a Band-Aid on it? Might they look at someone who is trying to help them feel better as a perpetrator of pain? Might we say that abuse of power can be in the eye of the beholder? We're not saying always, just that it can be. What if you had a doctor in an emergency room and somebody was brought in and had been hit by a car and their leg was hurt? The doctor grabs their leg and starts to move it through its normal range of motion until they are in a state of intense pain. Has the doctor abused the patient? So how do these nuances of experienced and associated interpretations of their meaning and implication get worked out? How many people would get upset if they were caused pain, if they felt they were caused pain by a doctor or a healthcare worker of any kind, or a supposed friend that was just trying to help them feel better by talking through something they weren't ready to talk through? Equanimity is a choice. It is a vantage point. It is a chosen lens through which we can view any dimension of life or relationship or conversation or team process or look at any dimension of the world through. And so if we make that choice, the choice to look from equanimity, then we tend to be informed more optimally. So we have these different fragmented parts of our systems, and they operate the way they do. The parts that we operate from can be victim parts, they can be perpetrator parts, they can be rescuer parts, they can be safety and control strategy dynamics, they can be fearful parts, they can be parts that want life to be a certain way, or they want relationship dynamics or team dynamics to be a certain way. And they assume that their views of life, relationship, social process, friendships, and work process, team process, or goal attainment are all the way that they should all be looked at the way the part looks at them. And so if we make a conscious choice to say, well, I'm going to look at this through equanimity, then any part of our system that is not as of yet aligned with that choice, it doesn't mean that it's going to quit looking at the situation from its vantage point. It doesn't mean that if we went to the ice cream store, 37 flavors, and we walked in and our parts, we had 3 different parts, and one of our parts said, well, I got to have the Rocky Road ice cream. And the other part said, oh no, it's obvious that the vanilla bean ice cream is the best ice cream. And the last part says, nope, I just want chocolate on a graham cracker cone. I don't know what they're made of exactly. The dark cones that are so flavorful. So those 3 parts of our systems, they're looking at the ice cream in a very different way. So if we say, well, I'm going to look at all the ice cream from a vantage point of equanimity, well, all of a sudden, that's not really satisfying to any of those parts that wanted the rocky road or the chocolate ice cream or the special kind of cone. And so our parts look at every moment of life from their own vantage points and saying, well, I want this situation, I want this result, I want this degree of control, I want this degree of safety or security, I want this degree of result socially or interpersonally. So until those parts are resolved, they will tend to feel what they feel. It doesn't mean you can't operate and choose from a relative state of equanimity. It just means that until those parts are brought into the same quality of consciousness that your conscious choice has affected through equanimity, that there will be a dissonance in one system. A challenge in the process can be if we very much want someone else to operate in what we perceive to be a higher state, we may not realize that that some part of them is as of yet not fully aligned with operating from that state. So if you had a child, and this is a poor metaphor, we apologize. If you had a child who was had an ankle chain tied to a stake in the ground, and you wanted them to be able to be placed up in a tree so they could play in the tree, and so you grabbed them and you lifted them and you pulled against that chain and it hurt their ankle. Your intention was that they get to play in the tree. That said, inadvertently, that intention, that hoped for experience for them, might cause them pain that they didn't that you didn't recognize was being caused because of the focus on getting them into the tree. How many people in our world want to help others so very much, and they can see a very clear, seemingly clear path to that benefit that they could offer others, and they're so focused on that benefit that they don't see the full state that the other person is operating from, all of the different dynamics that they're experiencing, and so they don't first take the chain off the child's ankle and then lift them into the tree. Two caveats in this process, and these are differences between people and differences between men and women in gender relationships. One, if we're operating from a redemption strategy, then we tend to have a narrower view of the totality of the other person's emotional process, mental process, spiritual process, or life process, than if we're not operating from such a vantage point, because the redemption strategy is an underlying unresolved pain that we're trying to soothe by redeeming ourselves. And a lot of folks that operate as rescuers or even healers can operate in those ways. Another is, and this is what a lot of women we have heard experience for men, is what might be termed a fix-it mode of supposedly dealing with women's emotions and relational dynamics or pain and suffering. To say, oh, well, if the woman is in pain, then I must do something in order to fix it, or all that's required is that I take away the supposed source of the pain, rather than understanding the woman's emotional process and kind of where the pain is emanating from, its meaning and implication to the woman, why she feels the way she feels in the present moment, and women may simply want to be heard as to their emotions of the moment and what they're feeling and why they're feeling it, and that may be the antidote that they're seeking, rather than men doing any specific task or effort in order to help them feel better.